In former U.S. Treasury Secretary Jack Lew, also former U.S. ambassador to Israel, a former chief of staff to President Obama, former OMB director, and current Columbia University professor. It's quite a resume you have there. It's good to see you, Mr. Secretary. So do you agree that the outlook for 2026 is bright?
Look, I think the outlook these days, you have to say, is uncertain. There's a lot of things that are very confusing. Even the jobs numbers that came in last week, you can look at one half and say it's good news, the other half say it's bad news. So uncertainty is the word I would use. When you have policy that's driving in an inflationary direction at a time when the deficit is as large as it is and growing, and the tariffs distorting so much that's going on in our economy, it's hard to say I'm comfortable. I'm not of the view that we're about to go over a cliff, but a shock could come, and we're not well poised to handle a shock.
You say inflationary policy. What do you mean? Are you talking about tariffs?
I think tariffs are inflationary. I think
they haven't been that. I mean, if you look at the bulk of where the inflation has been stubborn, it's in the services. It's not in the tariffs.
Well, it's actually it's coming through in goods now. What we saw was wholesalers absorbing for a period of time, passing through the cost increases over time. It's starting to come through, certainly in food. Even the response to take the tariffs off of coffee, everybody knows coffee is expensive. I mean,
yes,
we all drink coffee, and we see it every day.
Coffee, cocoa, bananas, no, definitely in parts of it. But I think in aggregate, actually, it's been surprising how tame the overall goods inflation has been.
So I don't disagree that it's been surprising that it hasn't moved through quickly. I think that there's an uncertainty in terms of what the response to price increases will be that's causing businesses to delay passing prices through. But anyone who looks at the economic analysis of how tariffs go through the economy, they end up in prices. Now, it doesn't have to be that it raises inflationary expectations. It could be a one-time increase. It's phased in over time. But you put that on top of the budget bill that passed over the summer, which is extremely large. It adds trillions of dollars to the deficit. And the only reason you're not seeing it is that the revenue from the tariffs is kind of offsetting it in the aggregate numbers. If the Supreme Court, as I believe it should, finds that those tariffs can't continue, then there's going to be a big hole in the budget that just forces
they'll figure out another way to get the tariffs, don't you think?
You know, I think they have mechanisms that they will use to try and extend many of them, but they're much more cumbersome. They take more time. They won't be as broad. And I don't think it will be the equivalent. I do agree that they have other tools, but the reason they went to this tool is it was a blunt instrument that you could make broad policy with. So I just think I go back to the word I started with, uncertainty.
So tariffs haven't really rescued us on the deficit front. And if you believe they were meant to address the trade deficit, that's also wider year to date.
Right.
By like a quarter.
Yeah. I think that there's very little about the tariffs that makes sense except for the fact that it did give the administration the ability to say, watch out, or we're going to put more of them out there. And that's created a negotiating environment. I don't think that's a good way for the U.S. to gain leverage. I don't think it's sustainable. I do think that for the moment it's leading to some conversations that wouldn't have happened otherwise. So I'm trying to be balanced in how I look at it. I don't see anything good that comes of ultimately having higher prices that level off higher, a global economy that is weaker because it's less efficient. And a smaller pie is not going to lead to better outcomes. You know, look at what Americans are worried about. You know, they're worried about the cost of health care. They're worried about the cost of housing. They're worried about the cost of food. And for most Americans, that takes their whole paycheck. There's not a lot left after they've paid for, health care, housing, and food. So when you have a fight in Washington about whether or not to allow an extension of support for health insurance, for millions of Americans, that means terrifying increases in costs or going without health care coverage.
You think it was worth shutting the government down, though, for a record amount of time?
I think two things came out of this shutdown that I think are going to be lasting. One is people recognize that the health care issue has to be dealt with. I don't know if they'll deal with it in the immediate months. They said they'll deal with it by the end of the year. We'll see. I hope they should. but I'm not sure that they will, and it won't go away because the issue is very real. The other is the focus on nutrition benefits, the SNAP benefits. I spent most of my career trying to protect the food stamp and the SNAP program because it's so essential to the well-being of middle class, lower middle class working Americans and poor Americans. I think more people understand that now than ever before when they see that an eighth of the country is exposed to extreme insecurity when SNAP benefits are in jeopardy. When you look at the economy, the lopsided economy, the overall number doesn't tell you how the whole economy is doing. People like us are doing just fine. People who are getting by paycheck to paycheck are hurting, and policy is going to have to respond to that.